Join me as I explore 5 frightening haunted places that you definitely should avoid at night, and I'll be spending the night in each one. There's something about haunted places that draws us in, don't you think? Maybe it's the thrill of the unknown, or the rush of adrenaline when you think you're being watched. Whatever it is, haunted spots can be seriously tempting, especially after dark. But let's be real, some places are just best left alone after sundown. I mean, think about it. The creepy atmosphere, the shadows cast by flickering lights, the creaks and groans of old wooden floorboards. It's the perfect recipe for a terrifying experience. And yet, we're drawn to it like moths to a flame. But before we dive into our top 5 haunted spots to avoid after dark, let's talk about why it's a bad idea to visit these places at night in the first place. You've got to be crazy to think it's a good idea to venture into a haunted location after sundown. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? You could get hurt, or worse, you could attract some malevolent entity that's just waiting for an unsuspecting visitor to mess with. Think about it. When you're walking through a haunted spot, you're essentially trespassing on someone else's turf, and that someone might not take too kindly to your presence. You're messing with forces you don't understand, and that's just asking for trouble. And then there's the fear factor. Let's be real, haunted places are scary enough during the day, but at night, it's a whole different ballgame. The darkness seems to amplify every little noise, every creak, every groan. It's like your brain is hardwired to expect something to jump out at you from the shadows. And don't even get me started on the stories you hear about these places. You know, the urban legends, the whispered tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained occurrences. They're enough to make your skin crawl even during the day. But at night, those stories take on a whole new level of terror. You start to wonder if they're true, if the ghosts and ghouls are really lurking in the shadows, waiting for you to make a wrong move. And what about the people who claim to have had experiences in these places? The ones who say they've seen things that can't be explained, heard voices that shouldn't be there. You've got to wonder if they're telling the truth, or if they're just trying to get attention. But one thing's for sure, haunted places are not to be trifled with, especially after dark. So if you value your sanity and your life, you'll steer clear of these spots once the sun goes down. So without further ado, let's take a look at our top 5 haunted places that you should definitely avoid after dark. Coming in at number 5, we have the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. This place has a reputation for being one of the most haunted hotels in the country, and for good reason. From ghostly apparitions to unexplained noises, this place has got it all. And let me tell you, it's a whole different story at night. The Stanley Hotel was built back in 1909, and it's got a rich history of paranormal activity. Guests and staff have reported seeing the ghost of F.O. Stanley, the hotel's original owner, wandering the halls. And then there are the children. Yes, you heard me right. Children. Apparently the hotel has a bunch of ghostly kids running around playing pranks on guests and causing all sorts of mischief. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's so scary about ghosts of kids? Well, let me tell you, it's not the ghosts themselves, it's the atmosphere they create. Imagine walking down a dark hallway, hearing the sound of children laughing and playing, only to realize that there's no one there. It's chilling, to say the least. And then there's the room 217, which is allegedly the most haunted room in the hotel. Guests have reported all sorts of paranormal activity in this room, from ghostly apparitions to unexplained noises. One guest even reported finding a ghostly child sitting on the bed staring at her. Yeah, that's not something you want to experience at night. Moving on to number 4, we have the LaLaurie House in Louisiana. This place has got a seriously dark history, and it's not somewhere you want to be after dark. The LaLaurie House was built back in the 1800s, and it was originally owned by Madame Delphine LaLaurie, a wealthy socialite with a seriously twisted streak. She was known for her cruel treatment of slaves, and it's said that she even performed gruesome experiments on them in the basement of the house. Needless to say, the house is haunted by the spirits of those poor slaves, and it's a place that's steeped in darkness and fear. Visitors have reported all sorts of paranormal activity, from ghostly apparitions to unexplained noises. And let's not forget the smell of decay and rot that permeates the place. Yeah, it's not exactly the kind of place you want to hang out in after dark. Coming in at number 3, we have the Bell Witch Cave in Tennessee. This place is seriously creepy even during the day, but at night it's a whole different story. The Bell Witch Cave is allegedly haunted by the spirit of the Bell Witch, a malevolent entity that's said to have terrorized the Bell family back in the 1800s. Visitors have reported all sorts of paranormal activity, from ghostly apparitions to unexplained noises. And then there's the cave itself, which is said to be haunted by the spirits of Native American tribes. Imagine walking through a dark, damp cave, hearing the sound of whispers and footsteps, knowing that you're not alone. It's not exactly the kind of experience you want to have at night. Moving on to number 2, we have the Villisca Axe Murder House in Iowa. This place is seriously creepy even during the day, but at night it's a whole different story. The Villisca Axe Murder House was the site of a brutal axe murder back in 1912, and it's said to be haunted by the spirits of the victims. Visitors have reported all sorts of paranormal activity, from ghostly apparitions to unexplained noises. And then there's the feeling of being watched, of being tracked by some malevolent entity. Imagine walking through a dark, abandoned house, hearing the sound of whispers and footsteps, knowing that you're not alone. It's not exactly the kind of experience you want to have at night. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have the Winchester Mystery House in California. This place is seriously creepy even during the day, but at night, it's a whole different story. The Winchester Mystery House was built by Sarah Winchester, the widow of William Winchester, heir to the Winchester rifle fortune. She believed that the house was haunted by the spirits of people killed by Winchester rifles, and she spent her entire life trying to appease them. The result is a house that's full of strange architectural features, from staircases that lead nowhere to doors that open into walls. And then there's the feeling of being watched, of being tracked by some malevolent entity. Imagine walking through a dark labyrinthine house, hearing the sound of whispers and footsteps, knowing that you're not alone. It's not exactly the kind of experience you want to have at night. But what really takes the cake is the story of a woman who spent the night in the house back in the 1970s. She claimed that she was awoken by the sound of whispers in her ear, and that she saw the ghost of a woman standing in the corner of her room. Yeah, that's not something you want to experience. Haunted places aren't just frightening because of their supernatural reputations, they're often physically dangerous as well. Many of these locations are old, decaying, and structurally unsound. Crumbling staircases, weak floorboards, and hidden hazards pose a real risk to anyone brave, or foolish, enough to venture inside. Add the cover of darkness, and it becomes all too easy to stumble into an accident. Ghosts or no ghosts, these dangers alone make nighttime visits a terrible idea. And then there's the psychological toll. Spending time in a place that feels inherently wrong can have a lasting effect on your mind. Even the most skeptical among us can't help but feel the weight of history in these spaces. The cold spots, the unexplained sounds, the feeling that you're not alone, they all build up, wearing down your nerves. By the time you leave, you might find it hard to shake the unease, as if the place followed you home. What's even more unsettling is the possibility of encountering something you can't explain. It's one thing to hear stories of ghostly apparitions or malevolent spirits. It's another thing entirely to experience them firsthand. Many people who have spent time in haunted locations report strange events that defy logic. Objects moving on their own, mysterious voices, or even physical sensations like being touched or pushed. Once you've crossed that line, you might find it hard to sleep at night. These places also have a way of tapping into your primal fears. Darkness, isolation, and the unknown combine to create a perfect storm of terror. Your senses become hyper-aware, picking up on the smallest details, a faint creak, a shadow in the corner of your eye, or the feeling of a cold breath on the back of your neck. Whether it's your imagination or something real, the experience is deeply unsettling. And finally, we can't ignore the cultural and spiritual warnings tied to these locations. Across cultures, there are countless stories of spirits that don't just haunt a place. They attach themselves to the living, whether it's through a cursed object, an ill-fated encounter, or even just the act of trespassing. The risk of taking something sinister home with you is enough to make anyone think twice. So when you hear about haunted spots, remember, curiosity might lead you there, but it's respect for the unknown that will keep you safe. That's it for our top 5 haunted places to avoid after dark. But before we go, let me ask you, have you ever had an experience in a haunted place? Share your story in the comments below. And if you're feeling brave, Be sure to check out our next video, where we'll be exploring the world of urban legends. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.